Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves. I'm interested to hear your experience of scaling this online business. What was a surprise for you? What was a direct takeaway from I learned how to do that in the mortgage business. It's just applying it to another business model. What's been the takeaways, the successes and the failures?
So there's a lot of great business books out there, but I think the ones that most pertain to how I run my business, there was a book called Rework. The guys that started Basecamp, which is it's actually the project management system that we use. They did blogs, years and years ago, and they did a whole bunch of them. They put them together into this book and they called it Rework. And the Rework idea was that you kept your business small and lean and you could move faster. Whereas we talked about Encompass, where it's so big and so bloated. Look at Microsoft. I mean, they're huge and, they can't make changes. They can't turn on a dime. So Rework was always that philosophy. We try to keep our business small. I try to reward the people that work for our business. My personal idea of how I want people to be paid, I always pay on how the company does for revenue. So there's always a base plus compensation based on how the company does as a whole. Not even things on that individual. You may want to pay, I've got people that do the onboardings, those 90-minute calls that you were talking about. And I could pay and say, hey, if you do, every one of those, I'm going to give you $50. The problem is if our team, if I need them to give attention to something else and I'm taking them away from onboardings, well, then I'm taking money out of their pocket. But if I pay them on revenue, everything that they do that helps the company helps them. And everything that everyone else does helps them. So I like to always pay on revenue. I keep my team small. We try to make sure that you've got cross training so other people can do other people's jobs. And then the other great book is probably Michael Gerber and the E-Myth Revisited. So that's the idea of the owner, the manager, and the technician. And just being clear, no matter what kind of business you run, what are those roles? What are the technician roles? Even if you're the owner and the manager and the technician, I think he uses Sarah's Pie Company as the initial, kind of the example he uses. And you just kind of frame out what are those different positions. And as the owner, I am currently doing the demos, or I used to do the onboardings, and then I hired somebody and now they do all the onboardings, and then I started doing all the demos, and now I'm like, okay, I don't want to do the demos anymore. It's too much technician work. It's spending all my time. I'm not able to have a vision for the company because I'm too busy with technician work. So then you hire somebody and you fill that box. So I think E-Myth Revisited is a fantastic book with Michael Gerber. It focuses on processes for a consistent experience, which is something that we built our business on, that experience, your onboarding experience. And that's also, we focus on that consistency. If I'm going to take on a new member or a new client, they have to fit into our system. We don't fit into theirs. If someone says to me, well, we need you to do this differently, then I say, I appreciate that, but maybe we're not the right company for you. Because as much as I want to work with everybody, if it doesn't fit into our system, we can't scale. And that was something that I fought my right-hand guy, Tom, with for a long time. I wanted to be everything to everybody and find a way to make it work, and we're going to customize this, and we're going to do that. And instead, it's, nope, this is what we do, and this is why it works. And when someone's like, or like you, and Scott's like, I don't like your memes, and I'm like, that's fine, but they make your phone ring. So this is what we have, and if you don't, this is how they work. And that's it. And that's kind of how we roll. And that has been very valuable because it stopped the distractions and allowed us to just scale faster. So keeping a lean team, having processes and being, just being true to your processes and scaling and not making changes and not going off your script, staying on what you do well and letting people, every time someone will come to us and they're like, well, other people have that website. And I'm like, yeah, they do. And you know why? Because we know it works, because we have all the analytics and the heat mapping. That's where we can tell where people click on, and we have all these results. We're able to, basically, it's like group share. We have 300, 400 people that have these results. So you're doing it by yourself. But we know this works. Why am I going to give you something totally different? Unless we're testing it, why would we give you something totally different just because you think it looks good? Who cares what it looks like? Do you want your site to get you loans? You got to know what that stuff's going to do. So that's what I would say for running any business. What I have learned is keep my team small because you want to remain profitable. And it's easy to get a bloated team very quickly. And then you're doing meetings, and then again, you have more people, but less revenue, or the same amount of revenue and just more work. And then also just scalable and stay in your lane and with what you do well.
Yeah, I actually think it is it's probably in the E-Myth Revisited or some other such book that you and I have read, where it's like, you should only hire a person, you should only hire a team member if they leverage your money or they leverage your time. So like if you can't make a direct correlation on a hire that like, hey, this hire is going to produce X amount of revenue, or this hire is going to get me X amount of time back, so then I can either decide to create more revenue or spend more time with my family or go to Jiu-Jitsu or buy another cowboy hat or whatever. If you can't correlate directly an employee or an FTE, full-time employee, if you can't correlate an FTE to an increase in ROI or an increase on our time, which is also a different type of return on investment, don't hire them.
Right. And Tom held my feet to the fire on that. We had that conversation just a week ago when I said, okay, this opportunity to hire this individual who I've known for other company, for 4 years, and I've wanted her to work for us for a long time. I have an opportunity and I want to bring her on. And he's like, well, that's great, but how's that going to free up more of your time? How's that going to make it so that you can focus on these visionary tasks and, running the company? And I had to justify to him, and that's his job, is to hold me accountable. And I had to justify to him what was the plan on how this did exactly what you said. Makes us more money, frees up my time, and allows us to build the company and improve.
Yeah. There's a process I walk our coaching clients through, and it's just a simple spreadsheet that I always want them to have up on their desk. And it's funny because when you get to a certain team level or a certain success level, they get it. They understand the spreadsheet. But where this spreadsheet really comes in handy is the person who doesn't yet have a team. They haven't made their first hire yet. And we just call it the RDS spreadsheet: remove, delegate, and systematize. So it's basically a spreadsheet that says, hey, here's the task. Here's scale 1 to 5, how much I like doing it. 5 is I love doing it. I would do it for free or for some compensation. And a 1 is I want to stab my eye out with a spork. And so what it is you create the task, you or any task you do, you rank it 1 through 5. And then if it's below a 5, there's a little place where it's like, what do I need to do to remove, delegate, or systematize this? And what I tell people that don't have employees yet is I'm like, hey, keep this up, because when you're doing everything, you're going to realize you hate reviewing the appraisal with the client, telling them that the appraisal came in at the contract price, above the contract price, below the contract price. If I never have that conversation again, I will be very, very happy. So I put that as like, it's a number 2. I never really want to do it again, but I'll do it if I have to. I need to systematize how the conversation goes. I need to create the email template. I need to create the script. And then the last piece of it, kind of to your point, is this like a operator task? Meaning, it could be somebody who's $15 an hour executive assistant. Is this a technician task? Meaning they've got to have some low level knowledge and there might be some questions that come up. Or is this really like an owner, high level loan officer task? And what I try to tell the new people, and almost nobody does it, is I'm like, what you're doing is you're building the job description for your next hire. And then when you have 3 people, you keep filling that out and you're like, all right, what's the next thing I can get off my plate so I can go do the visionary work? And instead of selling 1-to-1 to a realtor, I can go to a builder developer meeting and sell to a bunch of builder developers who are going to give me 30 loans instead of just 1 loans. And constantly refining this RDS spreadsheet is something I try to instill in our coaching clients. And not surprisingly, the people that do it scale really fast because they know that their next hire is going to take exactly these things off their plate and add more time and money to their business. And it's such a great tool, and I can't talk people into using it.
But you know what? You're forgetting the most important part when you hire somebody. You have to still do all the work and just pay them to watch you, because that's when I first started hiring people. Like, I'm going to hire a loan officer assistant, and then they're going to do this. And then what happens is you're like, okay, well, this one's a little unique. I'm going to do this and you watch, and then you'll do the next one. And then the next one comes in and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to show you on this one because this one's different than the other one. So you have to hire somebody and still do all the work. And then and then when you finally realize that you're doing that and how terrible that is, that's when you're actually ready to grow with people. When you're like, okay, I'm going to put and part of that is that other thing that I was going to say, which is you got to pull the emotion out of it. And it's very difficult in the loan business because you've got people that may be buying a home, and you never want to let somebody down in this idea of buying a home. And I'm not telling you that it's okay to let anybody down. You never want that to happen. You want to build processes where you're not letting them down. But at the same point, you have to take the emotion out. When I first would have people cancel, I was crushed. I took it personally. Like, Scott, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
It's me, not you, Scott. I can change.
How can I change the whole company just to retain one person?
I can change for you, Scott. And then now, like, it's actually a rule. They don't tell me when somebody cancels because I'm like, well, why did they cancel? Well, we obviously did something wrong,
right.
you know, like, and that just, but that's not it. Sometimes, you know, as you grow a company, and we've grown, you know, quite extensively, you're going to lose people. That's part of that process. And so those are the two things is when you remove that emotion, it's easier to train somebody and then let them do their job. And that was like when I brought on Austin to do our onboardings. Austin watched me do the onboardings, and I promised him we were going to put together a checklist of all the things we do, and I promised him that at least 30 times, and I never did it 30 times. But he watched enough of them, and then I turned him loose, and I watched him do it twice, and the first time I think I like let him get out one word, and I would step on him, and he would do something, and I would say, Austin, you got to do it like this, and I said, Austin, you got to do it. And then the second call, I just muted, and I still talked at it, but he couldn't hear me. So I'm like, Austin, you're doing this wrong. Austin, and what I realized is that Austin wasn't really doing it wrong. Austin was doing it like Austin and not like Helmer. And you learn to focus on the results. I get people that come to me and they say, Helmer, Austin was fantastic. He did an amazing job. Now, that shows me that they're having a positive experience. But are we setting things up properly? So we do an audit on them afterwards, and we can see he is doing them properly. And then are we getting the results with these people? Well, they're getting the results. So if I go listen to Austin today, I guarantee you I'll cringe. Oh, no, we're down. Why did you say that? Oh, you don't want to do that. Oh, no. But Austin does Austin, and he does Austin really well. And our people are happy. The results are there. So I just need to shut up and get out of the way. And I don't listen. I don't record the calls. I don't monitor them anymore. And that's one of the things you have to do is you have to give people that freedom to get the result and kind of get there in their own way or handle it their own way. Take your emotion out of it. And that's hard for some of us as micromanagers. It's funny because I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've owned, we haven't talked about the fact that when I bought the vacuum cleaner store or other things that I've owned, and I was never as emotionally attached to those as I was to our mortgage business because of my experience in this industry and my reputation in the industry. And when you're so emotionally attached to that, it's hard to let those tasks go. It's hard to you're afraid something's going to go wrong. And sometimes it will. And then you focus on fixing it and not letting it go wrong again. And, how can you make sure that that is a minimal mistake if it does happen? And I think every business owner can take that. Don't try to just teach, don't pay somebody to watch you do their job. Let them do their job. And sometimes you have to stop watching them do their job because they're going to do it different than you, but it's still all right.
Yeah. You're reminding me of two things. You're reminding me of that General Patton, the greatest general probably ever, basically won us World War II. General Patton has this quote where he said, don't tell people how to do things. Tell them what you want done and then let them surprise you with their ingenuity. Because we're going to smoke the cigar differently. We're going to run mortgage businesses differently.
Right.
We're meeting tomorrow for a couple hours because I'm going to tell you how to run your originator success business and you're going to tell me how to run my coaching business. And we're both going to cringe and be mad at each other. But it's like, I can see the flaws in your business better than you can. And you can see the flaws in my business better than I can because we just have different, like thoughts of ingenuity on how to get shit done. So I'm reminded of that quote. And then it's funny when you mentioned the don't pay somebody to just sit there and watch them. I'm coaching a client right now who you would think very fondly of, like you guys would just hit it off. And he's told me very clearly, he's like, my kids are almost out of the house. I've got another year or two with them. And then I've got probably another 5 or 10 years in this business. And I'm okay on the path to retirement. But if I want to retire like a rock star, within 5 years, I need to be making $2.5 million a year. I need to do that for a couple years. And then instead of like vacationing in Big Bear, my wife and I will get to vacation in Italy for our retirement. And I'm like, all right, if that's your goal by 5 years, 4 years and 10 months from now, you want to be making $2.5 million. We can get you there, but let's just do the math real quick. So we did the math. I'm like, you want to take vacations, you want to do this, you want to do that. You're going to work about 2,000 hours a year, more or less. And yeah, a lot of people work more than 40 hours a week and they won't take 4 weeks of vacation. But also a lot of that time you're going to be screwing around watching cat videos on YouTube. So you're going to get about 2,000 hours of quality work in. I go, so if we just take 2.5 million, divide by 2,000 hours, your time is worth $1,250 an hour, $1,250 an hour. That means you don't ever get to go to Chick-fil-A again. We went to Chick-fil-A for dinner. I'm like, if it's work time, you don't get to go to Chick-fil-A because you would never pay somebody $1,200 an hour to go pick up your Chick-fil-A. Right. So you got to be at your desk, dialing for dollars, building systems, scaling the team. You got to hire somebody to go get Chick-fil-A. And I actually use this example. Funny that we got Chick-fil-A. I'm like, and when they bring you back the grilled chicken sandwich instead of the spicy chicken sandwich, shut your fucking mouth and get back to work making $1,200 an hour because you don't have time to think about the $20 an hour tasks. And he said this, he goes, so you mean I don't have to sit there anymore and watch my LOA do their job? I'm like, no, that's exactly the opposite of what you want to do. Because now not only are you wasting her $30 an hour, you're losing $1,200 an hour every hour that you have to sit with them and micromanage their stuff. So if you don't have the right person in the seat, fire him tomorrow and find the right person. He's like, no, she's the right person for the job. I'm like, then lay off and let her do her job. And when she screws up, you're going to have to solve it with your knowledge, with some time. You're going to have to write a check for $5,000 to fix their mistake, but that's okay because that's the only way you can get to $1,200 an hour tasks.
The only way you get to where
if everybody's doing all the other tasks. And I could just see the light bulb going on over Zoom, like a little halo was over his head.
It's so hard. Like even now, I'll get consulted for some of the tickets, right? So one of two things works the best for us. Tom will either just reach out to me and say, check these tickets, and I have to click the link to that one individual ticket, or he's got it set where there's a view that I can only see the tickets that he's assigned to me. Because if I go into all our tickets, I just start randomly answering them. And I'm like, hey, wait, I'm a really highly paid support person now.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, why am I like answering a support ticket because the funny thing is, I learned this when I was an executive and I would go on vacation and I would always have an auto reply to my email. And it would say, I have deleted your email. If you really need me again, I come back Monday, email me again. And people were like, you're out of your mind. I'm like, you come back from vacation, you're going through literally thousands of emails, and the ones from Monday and Tuesday, you get to those first because they're the oldest, and you're jumping on those issues, and you find out all those issues were solved by Wednesday. They didn't need you. You're not as important as, I tell people, I'm just not that important. You think I'm important because you need me that moment, but like you said, the ingenuity, they'll figure it out themselves, but it's so hard to just continue to do that because I like helping people. I like interacting with our members. I like being involved, but I have to say to myself, nope, that's what they do. I don't do that now.
Yeah.
But it is hard.
It's funny. Al said, the guy we referenced earlier, who you met down in San Diego at the last event, he said that's the hardest thing for him because we all, as alpha male, alpha females, micromanaging, like we have this God complex where we want to fix all the problems. He's like, he said this the other day when we were doing a little site visit. He's like, I get a dopamine hit from fixing the problem.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how small or how big. Mm-hmm. If I fix the problem, you puff up your chest, you're like, hell yeah, I still got it. I'm still the loan officer. I know how to fix that guideline and do that thing. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, right after the dopamine hit, he's like, I'm a fucking idiot because I paid other people a combination of $200 an hour to fix those problems. And not only did I just waste my time, I made them less successful at their job because what I really did by stepping in and fixing the problem is I just told all of them subconsciously,
they can't do it.
You're not good enough to fix that problem. I'm paying you to sit around and not fix problems because I'm the big boss and I can do it. And that's a self-awareness at, I think he's 29, 30, 31. That's a self-awareness at 30 years old I didn't have.
I'll tell you, to prove the point that Al and I are doing it right, Al is a member, but I have no idea about any of Al's stuff. The only thing I remember seeing as I was looking at something once was his assistant was talking to our support team. So he has no idea what his membership with us is. I have no idea what his membership with us is, but our teams do. And that means we're doing it right because the people that should be handling it are handling it.
That's amazing. So talk about future growth because I'm interested, obviously you're well past foundational revenue. You're paying your bills. We don't have to share the numbers, but you're doing quite well. You're paying.
We're a seven-figure company. I want to share that. I love that. It was a goal to be a seven-figure company, and then the problem with goals is after you hit them, you're like, oh shit, now what?
Now what? 8 figures, dude. Come on.
Really? Do I want that though? But that goes against my rework idea. Like I always say sometimes like we're a boutique business because once you get to a certain point. This is true in all businesses. I love going to bed and breakfast. I love traveling with my wife. We went to a bed and breakfast years ago, and the woman that ran it had 11 rooms. And I remember having breakfast, and she was there, but she was the woman that owned it, not that ran it. It's different. Now, you go to bed and breakfast, they have 3 rooms. The owner is the person making breakfast. They're doing everything, right? They're probably even making the beds with maybe someone coming in to help vacuum. This woman I was talking to her about, she taught me that she'd been in the hotel business for years. She said, when you have a bed and breakfast and you have, and I forgot the numbers, but it might've been like 4 rooms. You have 4 rooms, you have 1 staff and you're profitable here. When you go to 5 to 8 or 9, you're bringing on more staff and you're making less money. You have to get to this level of 10 plus to now make more money. And that stuck with me. So the idea of, oh, well, let's get to 8 figures. Well, okay, what does that look like? Hiring more people, having more staff. One of the things that I don't go into a lot of detail on, but our business is extremely profitable. When we talk about revenue, like, you could look at Shark Tank and Scrub Daddy, and they're like, we made 80 something million dollars, but the guy that started Scrub Daddy didn't make 60% of $80 million.
Yeah.
But yet, when you have a company making 7 figures, making $1 million with a few employees, well, I take home a real healthy income. So I want to watch that I don't go into that realm. I need to know my numbers to know, okay, well, at what size are we, like you said, what is your return on investment for the staff and what are you bringing on? And, having that controlled growth, where do you get to a point where the customer experience changes and now people are, not happy with you anymore because you're getting too big? So we've been dealing with a lot of that stuff because we have totally organic growth and we have throttled our growth. And it burns me to do that because there's a sales guy in me that's like, we're chasing business away.
More.
Yeah, we're just like chasing business away. And, the idea that, well, if I turned it up, somebody from the outside in might go, well, you need to hire this and do this and do this and turn it up. And then you would just, well, it's not always that easy because I want to be responsible in our growth. But yes, now that's why we're here this weekend. That's why I'm here with you, is to sit down and talk and say, okay, what does this look like? Like, what kind of caught my eye is that a lot of mortgage company vendors, not the mortgage companies, but vendors, CRM companies, application companies, they're selling for millions and millions and millions of dollars. 250 million, 90 million for Flowify. Simple Nexus, an app, 1.2 billion. It was you that first brought that to my attention. 1.2 billion that they sold for. And it's like, oh, well, I don't know, this could be generational money. Maybe I should be growing this. So I want to look at, where do I want this particular business to be? Do I want to grow it to where it is just a really strong revenue? That was the other thing that I had to do last year, was write the standard operating procedures. What if I get hit by a truck? This can't be a business that relies on me. Yes, I'm filling these roles. And we figured out it would take 3 people to replace me, and that's an ego stroke, but it's just because of the talent stack, the different things and experience. But, how do this is now a thing that provides for my family, provides for my people's families. How do I make sure that it is that it will continue if something happens to me? And we've gotten to that step. So now it's like, okay, well, what do I do if I want to sell this business? What if we want to try to sell for 25 or 50 million? And I wasn't even thinking of that before. I didn't have an exit, which that's one of the things in E-Myth Revisited. He talks about always having an exit strategy, right. But I didn't have an exit strategy. I was like, you know what? I'm just a guy that knows this stuff and wants to feed my kids and make a good living. And it was, I guess you could call it a lifestyle business. Yeah. And then one day I woke up and went, oh shit, this is not a lifestyle business anymore. This is a business. Business. And it's like, this is a real thing. And it's like, got legs and it's bigger than me now. And that was awesome to see, but I backed into it. I had other businesses. I thought I had an exit strategy. This one, it was just because it was familiar to me and I knew how to pay my bills. Yeah. And so now it's like, okay, well, what do we want to do with that? And what is that going to look like? And having that vision. So that is what I'm looking at next. And that's why I want to sit and chat with you and say, what do you think? Get some opinions from some other people.
Yeah. It's funny. I had that eye-opening moment when we were doing like a trust review, because we bought another house. And I think the last time we reviewed my trust, my wife was pregnant with kiddo number 2.
I thought a trust review is when you cross your arms and like you
trust fall. Yeah. Chris, catch me. And so we were talking to my lawyer and he's like, okay, we're going through the stuff and whatnot. And he's like, hey, how's Consolidated Coaching going? I'm like, oh, it's really good. For a side hustle, that I do, 10 or 20 hours a week on top of my 40 or 50 hours a week in the mortgage business, it's making some real revenue. We went over the revenue numbers and he's like, all right, so, tough conversation. Does Karina know how to run Consolidated Coaching? And I'm like, no, she doesn't know anything about the mortgage business. He's like, all right, so if you get hit by a bus or die, who gets Consolidated Coaching? I'm like, what do you mean who gets Consolidated Coaching? He's like, well, you've got this significant revenue. even if it was in your, operating agreement or a buy-sell agreement that like, hey, you give the business to Justin Brown or Lindsey Behrens or Eric Lay or Al Sett or Adam Delmonico, one of the guys you trust, like you want them to give an annuity of revenue to your wife because you're gone and you have good life insurance, but this is significant money that should go to your family because of the business you built. I'm like, wait, what? I gotta start thinking about if I crash my new car, like who gets the business? He's like, yes, that needs to be part of it. So now it's in my trust, who gets my business if I die, and what my wishes would be for them to carry it on. And that was a crazy conversation to me because in my mind, it's like, well, I'll just retire in the mortgage business. Hopefully I'll have enough money to retire on. And if I die, I've got good life insurance and the mortgage business, there'll be 5 loan officers who attend my funeral and then are talking to realtors at the reception being like, so, we're really sorry for Scott's loss, but can we start getting your referrals? And so now, now I have a succession plan for the mortgage business on who gets it and a succession plan for the coaching business on who gets it. Cause it's like, yeah, there's real money there. That database is worth something. That foundational revenue, that reoccurring revenue is worth money to my family that I want them to get if my dumbass gets hit in the car, and that's a real eye-opening experience for two, almost high school dropouts like us.
Another story. So high school, I don't know if you were a dropout, but I never actually graduated high school. The way that I graduated high school was I threatened to go back. I was legally emancipated at 17 years old. So I have a really rocky backstory, and I left home at 13 and kind of came back home to my mother at 16. And when I was 17, she was moving up to upstate New York. And I said, well, I'm not moving up there. And so I went and got legally emancipated. So my senior year of high school, I was a legal adult. And that was my first business. All you need landscaping because that was the Yellow Pages back then. You wanted to be A. That was your Google ranking, was make sure your business had the letter A at the beginning.
That's why even around here in Vegas, there's still AAA bondsmen and AAA this, because like that's a holdover from the
Yellow Pages
days.
Yeah. That and understanding Google is an extension of the Yellow Pages, and that Yellow Pages tried to go digital with YP.com, but they got replaced anyway. So it was that idea. So my senior year, I got in a lot of trouble. I was dating a girl that worked for a doctor. She worked in a doctor's office. The doctor loved me. He was a great guy. And you were allowed to miss, there's 180 days in a school year, and I think you're allowed to miss like 20. And I missed like 90. So between the doctor writing me doctor's notes, and the women in the that I used to charm and buy flowers for in the attendance office that would always see me in the morning, maybe when I wasn't there. That was my senior year. And then I got expelled 3 days before the end of school because we had gone to the prom and we had gotten into a brawl, and I had pepper spray because we went to, in New Jersey, you go to the shore, and we got into a brawl with the local kids at the shore. So for the rest of that weekend, you had to be careful because we were all fighting each other. It was like a movie, like something from New York.
West Side Story.
Yeah, like something from the Bronx, right? And so we go back to school, and I take the pepper spray, and I'm screwing around with the kid next to me, and I spray him on the leg. And he's like, ah! And of course, the teacher, well, I was a smartass. So the teacher, she's like, well, what's that? And I'm like, nothing. I put it back in the book bag. Well, she went and got it. And thankfully, nowadays, I probably would have been arrested and booked.
Yeah.
But as it was, I actually got expelled 3 days before the end of school. And the only reason that I passed was that the principal hated me. And he said, well, in order to complete your classes and graduate, you need to take summer school. He thought he was going to, like really rub it in on me. And I said, I work. I don't have time for that. I'm going to come back next year. And he's like, you can't do that. And I said, why not? You won't let me graduate. I'll just take classes next year. And next thing you know, I never took my finals. I had passing grades on all of my finals, and I never got a diploma. My mother was pissed because I wasn't allowed to be in the graduating, the big graduation.
Yeah.
And we had an outdoor graduation, and all my friends were graduating. I wasn't even allowed to attend, right? And they had state troopers there, and the state troopers had my picture. So I show up at the graduation because I don't take it seriously. I'm 17, 18 years old. So I show up, and the state troopers stop me, and they get the principal. And I said, listen, Dr. Link, you can either let me in, and I won't cause any trouble. I promise. You have my word. And we knew each other to know that I was a man of my word. Or I'm going to take my van. I'm going to drive through the gates. I'm going to drive through the fence, and I'm going to do donuts on the football field where you're doing the graduation until I get arrested. And he knew that I was also a man of my word and stupid at that time. So he let me in. And when I got in, there were more people cheering for me as I came in than there were cheering for anybody that graduated. It was kind of like my epic Al Bundy days of high school stories. But yeah, so I don't even have a high school diploma. I think on my transcripts I graduated, but.
So this is so funny. And I've told this story on the podcast before, so people will know I'm just not trying to one up you or make it sound like we're clearly brothers from another mother, because my senior year of high school, I was the ASV vice president of the school. So I got to miss everything for the fun events. I wrestled. So like probably 20 days during wrestling season, you had to leave third period to go drive cross town to go to a wrestling tournament. And then I discovered surfing and really got into girls. And so like my buddy had a Ford Bronco, and we would go to first period, go to second period because we liked those classes. We would find whatever girl would ditch with us, and we would leave for Huntington Beach to go surfing after second bell, because there was like a little 20-minute break where you could get a snack or something, and we just wouldn't come back. And so at the end of my senior year, same thing. You could have however many absences, and the school calls my mom, and they're like, hey, your son's the ASV vice president. He was varsity wrestler. He has straight A's, and we're not going to let him graduate. He's got to come back and repeat his senior year because he has 57 absences. And she's like, well, you know, he was sick and he does all these school activities. They're like, no. We already accounted for all those. Those should have been about 27 absences. He has, almost double that. We're not going to let him graduate. So my mom had to go petition the school board. Like, the principal was over it. The principal was like, no, we're making an example out of this guy. He was the Associated Student Body vice president. That's not the kind of example we want in this school. So my mom had to go to the school board. And the only thing that saved me is I had signed up for the Army in my senior year, where I had my leave for the Army date, like August 17th. And she said, look, he's leaving for the Army. And so he can either leave for the Army with a diploma or not a diploma, but I can't talk this guy out of joining the Army. He hasn't talked to his father for 4 months because his dad's so fucking pissed that he joined the Army. He's not going to go to college. I was supposed to be the first one in my family to go to college. That didn't work out. So she basically threw herself on the mercy of the court, and they let me graduate. I did get to walk. I do have a diploma somewhere in a keepsake, chest. But yeah, you and I clearly brothers from another mother.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And what's funny is I was in all the honors courses and all that stuff too. And I'll bet you I out-earned probably almost everybody I went to school with. Doctors, lawyers, and some of us just get lucky. And that's where doing things that are non-conventional. I didn't invest in, retirement. I did at one point, and then we went broke, and I lost all that, which at the time I didn't know you could protect it, but I was trying to stay afloat. So I kept dipping into our retirement, everything we'd put away and all that stuff. And because I was on commission my whole life. So when the mortgage business tanked, you're like, okay, I can make it through this. It's a bad month. Okay, it's a bad stretch. Okay, it's a bad 4 months. Okay, shit, I'm in trouble. That was kind of how that went. So same thing. So like my kids, my kids are older, 23, 24. And I try to counsel them in being in their 401ks and taking a more conventional route. But when my accountant was like, hey, you need to take this money and put it away. And I'm like, hell no, I'm not. I'm like, I don't want the government telling me that I can't touch my money until I'm 60 something years old, or I'm going to have to pay 10% of it to somebody else and this and that and the other thing. And he's like, well, the thing too is they always told you put it away pre-tax, because when you're older, you're going to have a lower tax rate. And I'm like, hell no. When I'm old, I want a lot of money. I want to be making a ton of money. Yeah. And that so far is how my life has gone. I'm not making less. I'm making more, you know, and I'm drawing more. So I've invested in my businesses. I've invested in real estate. I don't know much about stocks. Not that I can't figure it out or learn it, but it's such a rigged system. Anything that you pay $1 million to have a network, a server, 8 inches closer than the next guy, because it makes a difference in how fast you can trade and how much money you make. That's something that I don't want to play in. I'm too low on that totem pole to figure that out. So, we invest in the business. That's why I had to have that death conversation to figure that out. Because all of our money, a lot of our money and revenue it comes from the business, recurring revenue, growth, and everything we built.
Yeah. Yeah. So where do you think your soft spot or your sweet spot is? Like, do you think it's, 2 million in revenue, 3 million in revenue? Like, where do you think you can grow to before you're like, Jesus, the business has outgrown Helmer. Now I got to get a CEO. Now I got to get a controller. Now I do have to talk to the financial consultant to shelter some of this money in a SEP IRA so I don't get taxed on it.
Which we're already doing that.
All this crazy shit, right? It's like, to go to the profit Biggie Smalls, more money, more problems. Like, where do you think the sweet spot for your business is, either in, number of clients or revenue or staff size, share whatever you're comfortable sharing. But where do you think the originator success sweet spot is until your 23, 24-year-old kid comes in and is like, no, Dad, I'm going to work for you. We're going to grow this to a 9-figure business because I want to be a millionaire. Like, where's the sweet spot for you guys?
Well, and that's it. And now you've hit my weakness, because I don't know. And that's what I'm trying to figure out. So I'm doing a little soul searching, a little number crunching to figure that out. Is this a business that I want to try to take big and sell? Is this a business that I want to, even if we maintain, it's a fantastic lifestyle. It provides a wonderful living. I always joke around, because I don't know about for you, I would think it's a similar thing. We make enough money that we're, for lack of better terms, we're just not bragging, but just being objective. We're wealthy middle class, right? So we're on the upper end of that middle class. And I always joke around and say, I'm a wealthy middle class, but I am a shit poor rich person. Right. In other words, I had to book a flight to come and see you today. My first flight got canceled at 10 something last night. I found out at 4 o'clock this morning when I looked at my phone, and I had to jump on and book another flight same day, which is going to be, the airlines don't look favorably on that.
Right.
And I booked a first class ticket, because I'm like, well, I don't care if I'm going to pay $400, I might as well pay $800, because I don't care. I can afford that. But yet I couldn't charter a plane.
Right.
So, I could see myself.
If you showed up on a private plane to the Vegas airstrip, I'd be like, dude, I want my $300 a month back.
Yeah,
like, you don't need my money, Helmer.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of it. Is it's like, well, do I, am I happy being at this level, or how many rungs are missing in that ladder? Because that's how I think of it in my mind. Like, you've climbed that ladder and you've gotten to a certain point, and now it's like there's missing rungs before you can climb further. So am I happy at these rungs, or am I going to take that leap and try to grab that next rung that's way higher up, where you start talking about, okay, well, maybe I do sell this company for 50 million, and that's, I don't know, because I am great at small business, but I don't have an MBA. And I do think that that's where maybe those things come in more valuable, because I don't have big business experience. I don't I'm not I don't have a board of trustees. I don't have these things. So I want to keep originator success, and I want it to grow, but I want to minimize my role in it, so that I play a technical role, a technician role of creating content, because that's my talent stack, and being the front man and doing some rainmaking. But in 5 years, I want a business that's part what do they call it? Shark Tank, and part the profit. So Shark Tank, people come in with their business and they have a really great idea or the beginnings of a powerful business, but they don't have the experience and the team and the capital to take it to that next level. And the profit, he recognizes businesses that are failing because people are failing their business. And he talks about, people, process, and product. And I would love, so I'm 45 and I'll be 46 next month. When I'm 50, I want a business where I can turn around and I could look at a Consolidated coaching and I could say, Scott, you have everything built out right now, but I want to take your Yugo or your little Chevette and I want to turn it into a Lexus. So I want to buy into your business. I've got the capital to do this. I've got the team to bring you in these other people. And I want to be able to take your business from that. And again, these are fake numbers, but just for round numbers, from that $1 million a year mark to that $5 million. So I want to do that at Originator Success. And then I want to do that for other people's businesses. And that's what I want my next business to be. I want to have the team behind me that we can come in and take other people's businesses and elevate them and make them more money, and I can make money doing it. That I think would be really satisfying.
Nice. So let's get some of the Scott Groves coaching out of the way, and we'll just make this public. So one of the things that I'm looking right now is, what we coach in our Consolidated coaching for loan officers is primarily lead generation. Eventually, we start to hide a little bit of the medicine and the cheese of like, all right, if you want to lead generate more, you got to have a team, which probably means you need to hire ahead of demand. Oh, you got a team, you have to have some systems. So we inevitably start coaching that stuff. But people initially come to us because my book's called Lead Generate, Double Your Pay in 61 Days. People think they have a lead generation problem. A lot of times they have another problem. Really is the other problem. And maybe that's a personal problem and we go into some personal development. Maybe that's, actually I'm generating plenty of leads. I'm just not converting enough of them, right? Or maybe they are going to get plenty of leads, but now they need a team to service that lead. So it's all kind of universal business principles. So what we're looking at next, and this is something we're going to kind of like really game plan out tomorrow, is we're looking at like, all right, consolidated coaching for loan officers could effectively be consolidated coaching for realtors, consolidated coaching for insurance brokers, consolidated coaching for financial planners.
Right.
So the first most logical step there is realtors. And I've got the guy, very successful realtor, was a rock star realtor, then became a rock star brokerage owner, recently sold his company to a national real estate company for a amazing payout, plus a retainer, plus got to keep his team, plus he's still selling real estate, plus he still has 40 realtors on his team. So I'm talking to him and I'm like, use my infrastructure, my billing system, my assistants, my websites, my payment processing. As a matter of fact, I'll get you your first couple hundred realtors because I'll just tell my loan officers, hey, do you have realtors that want to grow?
Right.
Put them in consolidated coaching for realtors. And now this realtor is going to coach them.
But here's, all right, but now you're violating the rule. Stay in your lane. So that's an awesome business opportunity. But because I get the same thing. People reach out to us every week. Helmer, my agents, they love what we do for them. Could you do that for them? And I say no. And right. I have had that same conversation with people in the real estate space saying, I will teach you everything we do so you could do it for the real estate agents and I'll get a little piece. Yeah. But at the same point, but yet I only have hundreds of loan officers and I could have thousands. And you same thing. So is that the right move to go lateral into a new vertical where you could just really double down on what you're doing now and grow that? Is that the right move, or does that now create another attention issue where you have loan, maybe you don't do that until you're not writing loans anymore. Yeah.
Well, that's the conversation I'm having now with my buddy is like, hey, I want you to be the face. I want you to do the lead generation, the lead generation education for the realtors. All I want to do is I want to have such a great business
that you provide the infrastructure.
You're
franchising.
Yeah, exactly. Franchising, affiliate, joint venture, whatever you want to call it.
Well, but in theory, it's just McDonald's. I've got all the posters that say this is how you make a burger.
Right.
And now I want you to take everybody and make that.
So what I'm trying to think of is how could I do this with no extra work from me, just having my team replicate it in the real estate space, and then also have the badass realtor who takes over all the production side of it, really the lead generation. He gets on stage and does everything, but I've created the stage. So what I'm trying to think through is that worth a 50-50 split, a 90-10 split? Like, that's what I'm trying to think through is like, how valuable is the thing that I've spent 7 years building so he can just plug in, step on stage? Because like we even have the marketing, we have the Facebook ads, we know how to run, the business. I know how to tell him to do thanks to you, I now know how to tell him this is the webinar you use to convert. Just swap out the word loan officer for realtor. Swap out the word call realtors for call listing appointments, And so I'm trying to think through that and just planting the seed for our talk tomorrow is like, I think there's a gold mine of revenue there without a whole lot of extra work by me.
But you can't be emotional about it because you have to really be objective. Okay, can your team take that on? And if they take that on, that means, okay, so in a perfect world, you're not taking that on, but that means your team has to. And if 100%. Your team takes that on, what does that do to your business? And do they have that attention? And what is their bandwidth to take that on? And what, there's going to be a need for support because guys like you and I, the high school flunkies, it's our personality. And not that the other person doesn't have a personality, but he's not Scott Groves. And we grow business through osmosis. People, that was probably something I learned from a guy from Perry Belcher. And it was the idea of, he had something that he did with, called the selling system. And it's the idea of a system. David Sandler, I learned that from a business coach that was also a Sandler sales coach. David Sandler was a guy in the 80s that was teaching psychological selling, and he had the Sandler submarine, and he talked about going through these compartments and bringing people through a process. And again, same thing, processes and all that stuff. But, how much of what I do when I sell, like I showed you, our schedule fills up organically. Well, can I replicate organic? And if you can, what does that actually look like? Or what do you do when that person is failing and it's not working for them the same way? Can you support them? So I think there's a lot of those questions you have to be honest about. And that's hard.
The good news is this guy also barely made it through high school, didn't go to college, has challenges with his father. I mean, like all the telltale signs of
Right.
what make you and I have a chip on our shoulder
Did he
and
go
want to grow a
broke?
business. Huh?
Has he ever gone broke?
Went broke in 2009.
Did you ever go broke?
Totally.
I was gonna say, because the thing about people that make money is that we've gone broke and we're afraid, like, just crazy afraid that we're gonna go broke again.
Dude.
Like every day I wake up and I'm like, what happens if this all disappears? And I'm like, mathematically, do you know how like the meteor has to hit the earth to break this business? But yet every day I wake up afraid that it's gonna fall apart.
Yeah.
Because of that.
The good news is, you know why he was a realtor? Because he went broke in 2008 as a loan officer.
Yeah.
And then he's like, wait a minute. I've been killing myself for this job where I make 1 point. I can go over here and do this job where I make 3%. He's like, I'm going to do that one. So yeah, he's cut from the same cloth as you and I. So that's one of the reasons I feel like it could work. And he and I have been in the same men's group for about 5 years. So I think it can work, but I'm also emotionally tied to like it working. And to your point about, you know, your buffet of products that you were emotionally tied to is like, is this a good business decision or is this a good emotional decision where I'm just getting the dopamine hit for like trying something new? Because like, why not try something new?
Well, that's it. I mean, I am the king of bridge building. I'll build 5 bridges, but they're all 60% over the river. So, and then I get bored, and that's where my team has to come in and clean up. And you know that was, I'll tell you, because my right hand guy is also my brother. So he's you know, we had a time where we had some I don't know, friction in our relationship because he couldn't keep up with the jumping around. He's the yin to my yang. He's a great project manager. He's the operations guy. He's very logical. I don't want to say he's negative, but I'm the eternal optimist, and he's a somewhat pessimist. So I'm like, we're going to build our own I'm tired of this reputation software not working properly. We're going to build our own. And he's like, you do realize it's going to cost a couple $100,000, right? And I'm like, I don't care. And he's like, and how much, like, he'll run the number. Like, he's the guy that just kind of, so when I wanted to do this hire, I said to him, okay, again, he works for me. It's my company, but he had to sign off on it because that's his role in my company. And even though I'm the owner and I could do what I want, well, no, his job is to hold me accountable, and he had to sign off on the hire. So it's that same thing. Do you have somebody that's going to look at it and say, okay, poke holes in it for you and tell you everything that's going to go wrong on it? And then, or is it, again, it might be a great decision, but is now the right time for that?
Right.
Because you've got this, you said you've made, half that momentum was in the last year. Are you going to risk losing that momentum because you now made yourself too thin? And I'm not saying you will, but what's your answer if that won't happen? That's what you have to be able to answer.
Hence the reason you're here, and I'm going to buy you very expensive cigars tomorrow at Caesar's Palace so we can sit down in the back and map this all out.
These are good.
Yeah.
These are a little lighter than what sometimes I've. What's funny is you smoke a lot more cigars than I do because my wife does not like cigar smells. So if I'm getting snuggling, I'm not smoking cigars. And
sexy time on the calendar 100% got deleted because I'm smoking cigars tonight. So I want to know that I chose you and this cigar over sexy time.
Right. So I've gotten to where I have some of the darker Maduros. I've learned I like that nicotine hit. These are actually pretty good. Coming down to this. So.
All right. So two closing questions that we always close the podcast on. One, and I don't care if this is personal, political, business. What's the question I forgot to ask? We're filming this at the beginning of 2022. For the first time ever, we're like months ahead on our podcast schedule. So this might not come out till April or May of 2022. But assuming we're in the first half of 2022, what's the question I forgot to ask Helmer?
I hate to come up short on this one. We've had quite the fun. Like I said, I feel very Joe Rogan-esque here. We've had a great conversation that circled around. What did you fail to ask? Oh man, I'm sorry. I'm really struggling on this one.
That's all right. We'll go to question number 2, and you can think about. We can circle back around.
Okay, I'll let my subconscious work on that one.
Perfect. Question number 2 is much easier, and sometimes for people like you and I, much harder. Favorite movie and why?
Matrix.
Whoa, that was quick.
Create your own reality. In fact, I'm thinking of getting a tattoo here on the forearm with, and a lot of tattoo artists, I've actually had to interview a few of them because they don't want to go near it. I want it to feel like it's popping out of the skin. It's going to say the words with the Matrix code in the background. It's going to say, create your reality. And that's why the Matrix is the original. I actually am one of the rare guys that liked the new one.
I liked the new one too. I thought it was good.
I watched it twice. And if you watch it the second time, you pick up things that they really did do well. And you see things that were just behind the scenes. And there again, it reinforced that idea of the first Matrix, which was, what is your reality? It's not that you bend the spoon. Is there a spoon?
Right.
And it's kind of that thing. So that's what I love about The Matrix. That's why it's my favorite movie is it's that reality. It's that breakdown of reality and our own head trash and your head space and limiting beliefs. So I think that's all in a great action movie. And, let's face it, Keanu Reeves, I wouldn't put him in, Macbeth. But when you make him John Wick or The Matrix, I think he really does those roles well.
So one of the best things about working in Los Angeles and living in Los Angeles my whole life is that I have had an opportunity to run into a lot of celebrities, Keanu Reeves being one of them. I used to go when I was broke, and I was trying to rebuild my business. I would buy the 2-day-old containers of cookies at like Ralph's, and they were like $5.99, but I didn't have $5.99, so I'd wait till they were a couple days old at the bakery, and I would go on Sunday and I would buy like 20 packages of them for $2, and I'd put a bunch of business cards in them. I'm like, all right, I can go for 3 hours to open houses on Sunday, and I can buy 10 to 20 packages of these cookies and $10 of gas. I think I have $50 in my checking account to get out there and generate some business. So I would go open house as many as I could. The first hour that open houses were open on Sunday, I'd take a box of cookies. I'd be like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Realtor, share some cookies with your staff. This was before everybody was terrified about a pandemic. Share these cookies with your people that come in, give them a business card. I'd love to be here as a resource when any of your clients are ready to buy or refinance. So one time I'm pulling up to this really beautiful house up in the Hollywood Hills that I wish I would have bought, because back then it was probably selling for $1 million, $1.5 million, and now it's probably worth $4 million. And this dude rolls up on a motorcycle, and I swear to God, like right out of a movie, like he took off his helmet and his hair just blew in the wind. Like this is nice and slow for a movie. And it was Keanu Reeves, and he was on his motorcycle, and I think he was looking for a house for a family member. And I'm like, whoa, you're Keanu Reeves. And he's like, yeah, that's what the movie poster says. And I'm like, dude, that's the coolest fucking Keanu Reeves like statement ever. So we both walked in. I was like super like, this is one of the few times I've been starstruck. Starstruck when I ran into him, and starstruck when I ran into Magic Johnson, because he was like my hero growing up. Maybe 2 times I've been starstruck in my life. And he was just such a cool cat, looked around the house, was really nice to the realtor, got on his Harley and took off. And I was talking to my buddy Kirk, and I was like, holy shit, man, that was Keanu Reeves. and so that was my Keanu Reeves story. So.
And I'm going to go back now. Subconscious which by the way, whenever I have an issue, I think my subconscious is triple as strong as my conscious. Any decision that I make, for as smart as I think I am, I think that my subconscious is actually the reason for my success. I let that do all the work. So the question you didn't ask is, what is one thing? So let me preface this. I have a successful company, 7-figure company. It's taken me from October 2014 to this year to get there. What is one thing that I would go back and change in the last 5 years that would have sped up that process, or that I would have done differently?
Great question.
And we've kind of touched on it, but I'm going to reinforce with it. I would have, going back, if I get one chip, I get one opportunity to jump in that the DeLorean, and I could go back, I would have listened to my right-hand guy and the business coach much sooner, and I would have put away the buffet and opened up my Kentucky Fried Chicken. And I would have simplified the offer and just stayed in our lane and not tried to make it work for as long as I did, being everything to everybody. That was the one thing that I did that held me back. Even though our revenue increased year over year over year, we didn't hit velocity until I made that commitment of, we're going to simplify and we're going to only do this and we're going to be the best at it. That's one thing I wish. My goal was always to have no regrets, and I don't have many regrets in life. I would say almost none. But one thing, it's not a regret, but if I could go back in the 5 years, I would go back a couple of years ago. I would go back. We switched in 2020. It had nothing to do with COVID. It just happened to be that year. But I would go back and say in 2018 and say, this is what's waiting for you. Just do it. That's the one thing that I would do differently. And that's the question you would ask me, is what one thing would you do different? I would have done that sooner.
Man. See, this is why we can't do a podcast, because now this has led to a story of like, what's the one thing that I would tell myself 5 years ago? Because that's a great question. Clay Hebert, Herbert, looks like Herbert. Clay Hebert, great guy, has done monstrous consults for Kickstarter campaigns. He's got a keynote called The Perfect Calendar. He's got another keynote called The Perfect Introduction. Really, really sharp guy. And he came to a couple of our events actually right before I met you, which is a shame because you would love this guy. So awesome dude. And about 4 or 5 years ago, we did a sit-down consult with him. And like Consolidated Coaching had kind of been like just it wasn't really even a business yet, you know, and I kind of loosely had a business partner, Mike Merriam, great guy, now runs his own coaching business, very successful, love the dude. We didn't need to work together. We couldn't really find our vision together. And we sat down with Clay Bear, and exactly what you're saying, we're like, well, we want to be all things to all people in the mortgage industry. So we're going to offer effectively the coaching we have now for $59 a month. Because, you know, if we can just get 100, 1,000, 10,000 loan officers to pay $59 a month, because it's $59 a month, who can't afford $59 a month in this business? And Clay looked us straight in the eye, and he's like, dude, he's like, I made this mistake. I'm known for like really having this successful marketing niche. And so what I did was I started a $80 a month program where you would have access to my Slack channel, and I would answer questions as I could. And then we would do like a once a week webinar, group webinar. And he gave me some advice then that I didn't take, and I wish I would have. He's like, when you have a low-cost product, be very careful that you're not building a tribe of people you don't want to lead. And sure enough, we said, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Launch the $59 program.
I remember when you were $59.
Yeah, and now for something similar, but much better because I'm more seasoned. We have an actual business now. Now we charge somewhere between $300 and $900 depending on what program people sign up for. And sure enough, that's what happened. We built a couple hundred people paying $59 a month. And even though I knew it and they knew it consciously, subconsciously, they thought for $59 a month they were paying for private coaching. And even now, my $900 a month clients, they know they're not paying for one-on-one coaching. They're paying for group coaching. They're paying for me to curate the group. And I do a lot of content on Sunday and drip it out throughout the week so I can work on my mortgage business. But what we ended up doing is we ended up building a $59 product where half of the people who were raving fans became haters because they got mad that they didn't have private access one-on-one at demand for $59 a month, which obviously I couldn't do because I was building a $100 million mortgage business. And so half of the people that should be clients today are dissenters from the program because they were in at $59 a month and they were like, well, why would I pay $900 now? You know, they should because the business is great and our clients are having success. But I did exactly what he said not to do is don't build a tribe of people that you don't want to lead, because at the end of the day, the person whose credit card gets declined when you try to charge them $59 at the end of the month, those are not the people you want to grow alongside with. You know, if they don't have $59 available balance on their credit card, they're not taking coaching seriously. They're not growing their business. And sure enough, that's the one thing, if I could go back in time, I would have had a much higher price point earlier with a better group of people. Then you curate a better group and a better tribe. Then they help each other grow. It's not a surprise that when I raised the price point, the people that were committed back when they were doing $15 million a year in loans are now doing $50 or $100 million a year in loans. And they're not scared that rates went up, and they're excited to get back to $100 million a year in purchase business, all because I had that higher price point, which made people more committed, which means I had a better tribe, which means they have more success, which means we have more testimonials to get other higher paying clients. And I'm like, Clay, if you're watching this, I'm sorry I didn't listen to you the first time. If I could go back in 5 years and kick my own ass, that's what I would have done.
Yeah. So similar thing.
Cool,
awesome.
Man. All right. Well, that's the way
fun.
That's the way to end the podcast, bro.
Sounds good.
Now we get to spend 2 days fixing our businesses.
Fixing businesses that aren't broken.
Yeah, I know. That's so funny. The mortgage business and running your own business is like the only way. It's the only thing that you can do where you're like, oh my God, I made this much money this year. I had this much impact. I helped this many clients. And all I can think about is the money I didn't make, the clients I didn't get, the opportunities that I missed out on, the things I could have been doing better. And it's like, that's not a way to think about life.
Yeah, and that's same thing. And I have a vision for what I want our company to be, and instead of me trying to be, I love learning. So that's one thing that Tom, my operations guy, he would point to me and say, "You try to learn Zapier, and so you could set up all these apps. I just pay somebody that knows Zapier." And he's and I'm like, but I love doing the same thing. I love the fixer. I love being the guy. I love the builder. I always fight that one, and that's a battle.
Awesome, man.
Now I'm ready for the team.
Well, we'll have you back in maybe a couple months because we're going to be doing a live event in March. So maybe we'll do another one of these in-between sessions. And Helmer, thanks for coming over, and thanks for flying all the way out here.
Thanks for having me, man.
Cool, man.
Take care.